It's a brand new morning, rise up to a brand new dawning as the passion starts.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, we are switching gears now away from politics and into some things environmental. And of course, we are talking about a very special conference that's happening today for our farmers here in Tobago, where we have some technocrats that are here to help our farmers understand how to treat with the things that they are affected it as a result of climate change, how they can even change or tweak some of the methods that they are practicing right now in the agricultural fields to ensure that we have a greater yield and to strengthen our food security here in Tobago. So I am being joined by Miss Professor Mykoo, and she is the coordinating lead author for the international panel on climate change at this conference. A special good morning and welcome to you. How are you doing this morning?
I'm fine, thank you. A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, so for those who have not been paying attention, who don't already know, could you just explain to them, what is this conference really about? What's going to be happening today? And what are you hoping to leave with the farmers?
Right. So, as you are aware, at the global level, we have been talking about climate change. And for many, many decades, we knew that climate change was upon us. But what has happened in recent times is that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change produced a report in 2022, and we confirmed climate change has been happening for decades, but it has become more and more exacerbated. In other words, it's worsening. And what is driving it is what we are going to talk about at the training conference today. So the training conference is really designed to bring to the attention of farmers in Tobago that climate change is upon us. It is impacting on the productivity of the agricultural sector, and we want to help farmers become sensitized as to what they can do to adapt to climate change. The key word here really is, yes, we know the science about climate change. Now what do you do? What action is needed on the ground, given the things are worsening? So the Mar Vista Institute for Agriculture and Training and Development is here to show farmers, we know the science, we need to link it with policy, and we need to link it with practice. In other words, it's power to make a difference. So, of course, Mar Vista has really collaborated with Republic Bank, which is one of the sponsors of the workshop, along with the Tobago House of Assembly, and in collaboration with the Argyle Farmers Association. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a group of scientists. Professor Ganpat from UWI is also going to be here, and Marcus Mykoo from Mar Vista and his team. We all are part of the Training Institute. But it's not about training only. It's training for development of the sector and for Tobago's food security.
So explain that a little bit, developing our food security, based on the science and based on, just the things that you guys have observed over the years, where do we need to go for us to have better food security?
Right. So in climate change, we are aware at the regional level that small islands in the Caribbean will experience severe drought. And we know this can happen from as early as 2040. Of course, we're already seeing it. And the World Meteorological Organization last year confirmed that we had way surpassed temperatures ever recorded. It was the hottest year ever recorded in human history. So with that heat stress and the drought associated with it, the crops will wilt the same way we feel inconvenienced and we react to heat stress. The crops are also reacting by wilting. So with drought, there is no water to irrigate the plants. And then, of course, you have the other extreme, which is intense rainfall over a short period that then causes flooding. So you have drought and you have flooding, and it's happening right throughout the Caribbean as well as it's being experienced in Tobago. What we plan to do is to unpack a story, a narrative around impacts of climate change that are being witnessed in the Tobago context. And I will, of course, paint a picture of the global warming, its impact on all of us as a planet, and then drill it down into how the farmers in Tobago can adapt. So the messaging will be really what to do. Of course, with to do, we really are telling farmers, we are going to train farmers as to how to treat their crops to make them more resistant to drought and to flooding. And there are emerging technologies to do that in terms of products that can help farmers save their crops, either from a flood or drought, because a lot of farmers invest quite a bit in their agricultural production. So that science is going to be brought to the farming community in Tobago.
And are you confident that, we can here in Tobago develop those strategies with your help, of course, to have a better agricultural system here in Tobago so we can feed ourselves, because we really can't be depending on the rest of the world to get our food?
Right. So I think if we step back from COVID-19, the entire world recognized that there would be a food supply chain disruption, that borders were closed. And so suddenly we had to become self-sufficient in food production, and the alarm bell went off. Our food security is now endangered by another global crisis other than climate change, right? So what we are saying is we need to secure our future. And the way in which we have to do it is that we have to look at agriculture in a sustainable way. We need to promote climate smart technologies which are affordable for farmers. So you can use your mobile app. And the Caribbean Institute for Hydrology and Meteorology sends out bulletins.
Yes.
And it tells the Caribbean, farmers, you can expect drought over the next 3 months. Therefore, you need to watch your plants closely. You need to find sources of irrigation. You need to have mixed cropping for shading crops that may wilt, and so on. You look at the techniques, revisit the techniques. Then you're going to have very heavy rainfall in a certain period. So the information has to trickle down. When it comes to our meteorological office locally, the Met Office will tell us, by the same way ODPM uses the app for early warning systems, they can send early warning systems to the agricultural sector. Drought, flooding, farmers be ready, get your crops secured, ensure that you are using the trenching and the proper drainage canals to get excess water off your field quickly as possible. And of course, what we will do in the training is to show the use of these new climate smart technologies. They're not new, they've been around, but it will be new to farmers.
Yes. And when we had that conversation yesterday with Mr. Mykoo, he explained a few of those little techniques that we knew. We learned even at the primary and secondary school level and so on, but we seem to have forgotten them for some reason over the years.
Right.
But what are some more of, he was explaining in terms of the taproot and making sure that taproot, which is the anchor for the plant, that remains healthy and that sort of thing. But what are some of those other things that farmers need to be aware of to make sure that they can have the best yield within the current conditions that we have?
Right. So, as I said, information can be shared with farmers using those mobile apps. What is also required is the agricultural extension officers need to distill the key messages, because if you look at some of the bulletins, they're sometimes highly scientific for a farming community. So agricultural extension officers are the hands and the feet on the ground who should be in the fields working with the farmers to say, these are the messages, actually distilling or boiling down the message so that it resonates with the farmer. And I think once the technology is being embraced, once there's that face-to-face contact with the farmers, the uptake of those messages would be enhanced. We can't do it all remotely. you have to have contact, direct contact with the farmers.
You know, and as we're having these conversations, how important it is for us to treat agriculture as a science.
Right. So what I can say is that the science of crop cultivation has existed in human history, in the Egyptian civilization, in the Mexican and the Mayas and Incas and so on. They had very sophisticated systems of crop production. So that science has been around. So we are not saying that we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The science has been around. But of course, we have new science, emerging technologies that are designed to help us cope with climate change. Egyptian civilization was brought down, collapsed because of droughts and famine. The future of our planet is really revolving around now climate change. If we continue, the earth has evolved. It, like any other system, the natural system, it ages with time. We all age with time. But the earth has been around for thousands of years, and we've always had disasters. But what is happening is that we as human beings are emitting all these fossil fuels, all these greenhouse gases from gasoline consumption, from the industrial plants. Not as small island states, our carbon footprints are small, but we belong to one planet.
And you know, I mean, sometimes it's hard for people to understand exactly the impact of that on us. Even though we have the smallest carbon footprints, we feel in some ways the most effect. And you know, up comes to mind is that of what's happening in the Pacific with the Marshall Islands, which are being lost right now. I'm not too sure people paying attention to some of these things. But yeah, I mean, you know, what's the threat? I mean, and I'm kind of moving away from agriculture a little bit, but it's still related. You know, how vulnerable are we, especially here in Tobago, to even just the rising seas and so on?
Right. So what is happening with the global warming is that the glaciers or ice is melting. And it happens in the Arctic. That water is going to filter down all through the oceans to the Caribbean Sea. And that's when the sea levels will rise. If sea level rises, it can impact on all our freshwater resources around our coasts. No fresh water means you cannot grow food. That's the kind of issue we're dealing with. So I was the coordinating author for the Small Islands chapter of that big report produced by global scientists. I headed the chapter, coordinated the chapter, and we worked with people from the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and the Caribbean, all as small island states. And we are the most vulnerable, because of course we also have the heat stress with the coral reefs dying off.
Yes.
And if we move beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, that's it for us.
You know, and that is why, you know, we paid quite a lot of attention to when the Prime Minister of Barbados, Ms. Mia Motley, had sounded that alarm. You know, that 1.5 degrees. It's actually quite a lot. And we're feeling it just in our daily temperatures. 1.5 is actually quite a lot. And it's very impactful. So there's some things that we need to be aware of.
We actually may tip that point in the next couple of years because of the El Nino effect. We smashed world records last year. The planet was hottest ever. And in the next 5 years, with the El Nino being around, we can really tip the point, and the damage can be irreversible for our fragile ecosystems in the Caribbean and the Pacific.
So certainly, and this is why we need to look at the science, and we need to change even some of the things that we can do. We may not be able to stop climate change, but there are things that we can do in our own spaces so that we can have food in this case.
But I should add, sea level rise is slower. What we have to be very careful of is the more intense hurricanes that we're getting. Because the crop damage from that, if you've ever seen what has happened in Jamaica and Dominica and Belize and all of these small islands, Belize is still considered small island developing state. The damage to crops is enormous, and the recovery is a long period. and farmers need to be compensated for that loss.
Yes. And I mean, there's a lesson for us because, I mean, we still talk about the fact that Tobago has never, agriculture sector has never really recovered from Hurricane Flora.
No.
But I want to thank you so much from Professor Mykoo for being here with us and for just giving us a little bit of nuggets for us to really consider. And I know there's quite a lot good information that's going to be coming out of the conference this morning, and we're hoping that the farmers can take some of that and utilize it. So thank you again for joining us.
You're welcome. You're most welcome.
All right, viewers. Well, we're just going to leave this conversation right there, but we got a lot more coming up for you on the program, so please don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break.